Hello everyone, and before you ask, yes, I did get a haircut. Thank you for noticing. But yeah, this is the video that I have been teasing on and basically been building up for a while now. This is the big video in which I talk about all the films of 2021 that I had seen but hadn't given proper videos to. Some because I was too preoccupied with school, others because I just, you know, didn't have the energy to do so, or some other reason that I'm pretty sure I don't even remember. But yeah, here we go. This is going to, of course, be the final video that I will be releasing for the year. Hard to believe the fact that 2021 is almost over, but this year, there's a lot that happened. A lot happened. Like, a lot happened. It's very much one of those years in which it's like so much happened, but yet so little happened at the exact same time. You know, it's kind of weird. But I thought I would close out by talking about the few remaining things that I have yet to review. Now, this is mainly ranging from things that came out from around like mid-October to now. So keep that in mind. So, why continue to dilly-dally when... Let's just actually get into the dang video already. Now, the first... Oh, sorry, I had to adjust that. Now, the first film I will be discussing released on October 8th of 2021. And that film is Daniel Craig's fifth and final film as James Bond, No Time to Die. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan of James Bond. Don't get me wrong, I do like the character, I do like the fact about how he's basically the pinnacle of British espionage and all the other stuff. Of course, I am very familiar with a lot of the actors who have played Bond, from Sean Connery to Roger Moore to Timothy Dalton to Pierce Brosnan, and of course to Daniel Craig. Although the only Bond films I have seen are the Daniel Craig movies, but that was only because, you know, it was like in the week or so up the week of No Time to Die. So I wanted to get in all the movies in just before I saw it. Yeah. So that just sort of gives you my little bit of history with Bond before I get into this. I definitely have to say, for Daniel Craig's final outing as James Bond, this was probably the best possible note that they probably could have ended on. Like, it was really well made. Obviously, of course, you know, like, to start off with the positives, of course, you know, Daniel Craig did a fantastic job, of course, as always, as Bond. It's clear the fact that he is giving it his all here, because he knows going into this movie, this is going to be the last time I'm ever going to do this role. And, you know, he does a really fantastic job. Rami Malek actually does a really great job as the villain Safin. I thought he was really great. Although one of the only few complaints I did have with this movie is that I wish that we had gotten to see more of Safin. He is in the movie a decent amount, although I do wish the fact that we could have gotten him for a little bit more, because Rami Malek is a fantastic actor, and I really wish the fact that we could have gotten to see, you know, more of Safin. That's just what I wanted. Also got the fact that they brought in a couple of other characters from the older James Bond, like the other Bond films. Like, I'm super glad seeing Jeffery Wright appear as Felix. I thought that was, you know, really cool. Obviously, of course, they bring in Léa Seydoux from Madeline Swan from Spectre. And, of course, they bring in a couple of other... Also bringing in new Bond members, such as Lashana Lynch portraying the new 007, who I didn't really care for all that much. Like, obviously, of course, you know, she's supposed to show, like, you know, the world's moved on since Bond, you know, retired, and, you know, of course, she's been given 007 status, you know, which was his old number and whatnot, but, you know, I just thought she was fine. I didn't really care much. Not to say the fact that Lashana Lynch isn't a great actress, no, far from it, but I definitely have, like, although compared to, say, like, Ana de Armas's character, I thought she was really interesting. She was really funny. She had great chemistry with Daniel Craig, which makes sense because they were in Knives Out, and this filmed like a year after they had finished working together on Knives Out, so there's that. And also, it's surprisingly funny. As most people may or may not know, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the creator of Fleabag, actually came in and helped spice up the script at Daniel Craig's request, which was really cool. And the comedy works. It doesn't feel forced. Like, it's not super, like, gut-bursting laughing, but it's nice seeing that little chuckle every now and again, you know? It's, yeah. Also thought the fact that the opening song by Billie Eilish was actually pretty good, you know, seeing as how we've had about a year to listen to it before the film actually released. But seeing it paired with all those visuals was just really cool. And the emotional payoff at the end of the film was just absolutely heartbreaking, but yet makes sense for James Bond. So yeah, I would definitely say the fact that this is probably the third best, for me personally, it ranks third among Daniel Craig's Bond films. I don't think it's as good as Skyfall or Casino Royale. Casino Royale will always be the best to me, but I did think it was better than Spectre and Quantum of Solace. So I am going to give it a 8.5 out of 10. Now, we move on to the one that I've been waiting to talk about for a while. Dune. Now, Dune is, of course, a movie that people have been trying to make into a movie forever. They attempted it once back in 1984, but David Lynch, to interesting results. I'll put it as that. Of course, there was a sci-fi miniseries based upon it, but with this new adaptation that released this year, I was pretty confident in it. Denis Villeneuve, fantastic director, loved Blade Runner 2049, and the cast that was attached for this was amazing. Timothée Chalamet, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem. Like, jeez, the amount of people involved in this movie is insane. And obviously, of course, when it comes to Dune, you need it to be this big, massive, because the book and story of Dune is, of course, iconic, as it set the groundwork for most major science fiction to come. Obviously, of course, George Lucas drew on a lot of inspiration from Dune for Star Wars. I mean, the main character is born on a desert planet, you know. Not saying the fact, you know, Arrakis, Tatooine, it's kind of similar with each other. But, yeah. Now, I've only really read the first 2/3 of the book, because the version that I have here is split into 3 different sections. Book 1 is just called Dune. Book 2 is called The Maud Dib, which is the name that Paul has been given. And Book 3 is called The Prophet. Now, I've only managed to read up to... I finished the first 2 books, which encompasses like the first 458 pages of the book out of like 677. So I'm not... But it's interesting the fact that the point in which I stopped reading the book was exactly the point where this movie ended, because it has been no secret the fact that Denis Villeneuve has stated this is only part 1 of a 2-part adaptation, because the book is so huge that he needed to split it into 2 movies in order to be able to properly tell the story. And yeah, obviously, of course, that is one of the few criticisms that I do have of this movie, is that I knew that ending was coming, but it's like, you get the feeling that there was going to be so much more story to tell afterwards. They gave little hints and teases here and there, but, you know, it's like, come on, man, don't leave me hanging like this. But, hey, we are going to be getting Dune Part 2, and it is going to be coming out in 2023. Gonna be a while, but it will be worth it, because, yeah, Dune was fantastic. Like, I still stand by that Spider-Man No Way Home is probably my movie of the year, but Dune is probably a close second, because this movie was amazing. This was built for the theatrical experience. The visuals, absolutely breathtaking. Just knowing the fact that so much of it is in practical camera effects is just jaw-dropping, because the scope and scale of everything is just incredible. The performances from everybody all around are pretty solid. Timothée Chalamet, of course, plays Paul Atreides. And I really like the fact that they delve in the fact that he's been made into this messiah figure because, you know, he is a male with the teachings of the female Bene Gesserit, and how he kind of doesn't really want to be this messiah. Like, he doesn't want this role that he's basically being called upon. I think that's actually really interesting. And they gave so much to the character of Lady Jessica in this. Like, obviously, of course, they did give her some stuff in this, But obviously a lot has changed from 1965 to 2021, which is when the movie did release. And the stuff that they did with her was really cool and interesting. Not every character gets a chance to shine, however, like, Dr. Yue, I think is his name, only gets, like, maybe 2 or 3 scenes. Like, he doesn't get much. Whereas other people, like Jason Momoa, for example, as Duncan Idaho, gets a lot of attention, and he gets a lot of screen time. You get to see, like, his relationship with Paul, his relationship with the others, about how he's being sent with the other Fremen, like, for example, Javier Bardem's character, oh no, I'm forgetting what Javier Bardem's character, Stilgar, who's also really interesting, and then, of course, you got Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck, who's also great, and Stellan Skarsgård, who portrays a really menacing Baron Harkonnen. Like, he is really scary in this. Yeah. And the score. Oh my god. The score by Hans Zimmer is some of the best music that he has produced in years. It is so good. And the thing is, too, they really, combined with the visuals, it's just an experience that you just can't forget. This movie is really fantastic. Very much like how this book is also fantastic as well. Like, my favorite nonfiction novel of all time is The Disaster Artist, The Chronicling of the Room, written by Greg Sestero. But this is still probably to this day my favorite fictional novel. Because, you know, and it's really amazing because it's technically been a while since I've read it, but it's amazing how much I was able to recall watching the movie. It's like, oh, I actually remember a lot more from the novel than I initially anticipated. It's like, oh, wait, they changed that from the novel. It's like, oh, they added that part in. It's like, oh, they changed that character introduction and things like that. But yeah, that just goes to show about how memorable Dune is and how influential it is. And I'm really excited to see where Dune Part 2 is going to be taking us, so I'm going to give Dune a 9. Now we move on to the second to last Marvel movie that released before Spider-Man, and that was Eternals. Now, Eternals was a movie that a lot of people were very mixed on, to say the least. Personally, I thought it was alright. You know, it had some really cool set pieces, like the visuals, of course, you know, are always fantastic. I thought the fact that everybody involved did about as good a job as they could. I mean, Kumail Nanjiani, he's like one of the most likable dudes ever. And seeing him just bounce off all the other Eternals, and the fact that he's this big Bollywood movie star, is absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that there's this big Bollywood dance number as well. I really like that. I also do really like the fact that it was kind of also served as a bit of a love story between Icarus and Cersei. I thought the fact that, you know, that was always a big part of it too. But, and of course, you know, everybody involved is really big. Like, you got, like, really big names like Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie, Kit Harington, Gemma Chan, as previously mentioned, Kumail Nanjiani, Brian Tyree Henry, Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, who they are clearly setting up to be Black Knight in a future Marvel project, by the way. It's really cool. And I've always really liked those Marvel projects that really dive deep into the more cosmic and out there side of the Marvel Universe. We get bits and pieces, we get tastes of it in stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy or Captain Marvel, but with Eternals, you really get to explore, like, those really lesser known and obscure characters. Like, I'm still waiting for when inevitably we're gonna get a Nova project or a Darkhawk project. Like, it's just really, really cool just being able to see all this stuff. However, there are some things about the movie that I was not too fond of. For example, this movie was way too long. Like, it was almost 2.5 hours long. But with something like Spider-Man being that length, it's kind of understandable because not only is it wrapping up this era, the homecoming era of Spider-Man, but it's also wrapping up, like, it's a celebration of over 20 years worth of Spider-Man films. That makes sense. Here, it kind of feels a little bit less justified, in my opinion. And also, I didn't really find the characters to be all that engaging. And, you know, obviously, of course, we're clearly going to see them appear in other Marvel projects. I mean, spoilers for the mid-credit scene. You know the fact that they're clearly going to do something with Eros. You don't get a big name like Harry Styles and not do anything with him as Eros. It's saying the fact that he's also the brother of Thanos. That's going to be pretty big too. And also, really love the fact that they brought in Patton Oswalt to voice Pip the Troll. I'm just happy the fact that they brought in Pip the Troll, because it's like, oh my gosh, they actually brought him in. I never thought that Marvel would actually bring in that character, but here we are. And of course, you know, I don't even know if there really was a villain in this movie, but just kind of goes to show about how kind of forgettable it is, because I don't even know if there even was one. But that doesn't mean the fact that I didn't downright hate this movie. It's just, out of all the Marvel movies that I saw this year, I definitely do think it was one of the more weaker ones. Like, I very much like Black Widow. I didn't hate it, but I just kind of got indifferent to it. So I'm probably going to give it like a 6 or 6.5. Now, we move on to Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, ever since this was announced back in early 2019, I was hyped for this movie, because the idea of the fact that this movie is technically Ghostbusters 3, and it's being directed and co-written by Jason Reitman, the son of Ivan Reitman, the director of the original 2 Ghostbusters films, and it's basically a passing of the torch from one generation of Ghostbusters to the next. I'm like, this is what Ghostbusters 2016 should have been. And yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife was a really solid movie. Like, obviously, of course, you know, the performances from everybody around are really fantastic. McKenna Grace, you know, she does great, alongside Cary Coon and Finn Wolfhard. Also, it was really a joy to see the original Ghostbusters again. It was really amazing seeing Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Ernie Hudson, Annie Potts. Seeing all these classic Ghostbusters characters appear was really, really fantastic, and it was really cool. And there's just something so sweet and sincere about this movie that I just really love. And the way that they were able to pay tribute to Harold Ramis in this movie was absolutely really fantastic. Like, seeing that moment towards the end of the movie, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That one moment towards the end, it's like, wow, that was really nice and really special. I mean, there really weren't that many ways the fact that they could have been able to incorporate him in, because, you know, Harold Ramis has since been gone for 7 years. It's crazy, but, you know, this is probably the best that they could possibly do, and the way that they were able to do it was not bad. It served to be both respectful and helped to move the plot along, seeing as how, you know, the main characters are basically the great-grandchildren, they're basically the grandchildren of Egon Spengler, so there's that. Also, Paul Rudd's in the movie, and he's great. But then again, he's Paul Rudd, so I kind of, you know, it's kind of hard for him to not be great. Really wish the fact that he could have been in the movie more. Like, there's a moment towards the middle in which he kind of disappears. And it's like, oh man, I really want to see more Paul Rudd, though. But then again, you know, like most of America, I love Paul Rudd, so, you know, seeing more of him, I don't really mind. But, yeah, I just really enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife. Really legitimately excited to see where exactly the future of this franchise now holds, and yeah, I just really liked Ghostbusters Afterlife. Really not much else to say, so I'm going to give it, you know, solid 8. It's pretty good. And then the final movie that I saw that I'm going to be discussing is Matrix Resurrections. Now, some of you early viewers may know the fact that I posted a review of The Matrix back in 2019. I have since unlisted it because my opinions on the movie have since changed. Because I have since grown to appreciate the themes and the messages behind The Matrix. So, I guess you could say I've grown to like the movie more. The sequels, I actually didn't really hate all that much. I thought they were a bit much when it came to some of the philosophy stuff. Like, that architect scene, I could kind of follow it, but it's just so wordy and just so out there. It's like, okay, well, okay, I think I got, like, maybe every 5th word. And Revolutions, you know, it was a thing. And it seemed like, you know, it was legitimately going to be the end. And one of the big things that many people went into this movie going was, why? Why is there a 4th Matrix movie? Like, why does this need to exist? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy that it does exist. Being able to see a return to this world and being able to see Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss and all these other original actors come back for this movie was really cool. But it's like, what is the purpose for this movie existing? Well, as Lana Wachowski ended up revealing during an interview, the main reason why this movie existed was because some time ago, both her parents died, and both her and her sister Lily's parents ended up passing away, and she also lost a really close friend. And so she figured that the best way to process that grief was the fact that while she couldn't have her parents or her friend back, she could have Trinity and Neal back. And seeing them alive and well again and getting that happy ending is really cool. And I think that itself is actually kind of really nice and sweet, because, you know, it's being used by the filmmaker as a way of being able to filter their grief towards the loss of their loved ones is really interesting. And very much like, you know, Eternals, I thought it was alright. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was alright. Obviously, of course, it's nowhere near as good as the original Matrix. But then again, I don't think really any of the sequels really could. But I do think the fact that this movie, the highlights of it were, for me, the cast definitely does a good job with the material they're given, of course. Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss, it's always great to see them back as Neo and Trinity. They do end up recasting two specific characters, of course, that being Morpheus and Smith. And while I did think Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Jonathan Groff both did good jobs with the role, it was kind of a bummer the fact that we didn't get Lawrence Fishburne or Hugo Weaving back. I really would have loved to have seen them return. They did come up with an in-story reason as to why exactly they don't look exactly the same, but, you know, it's still kind of a bummer the fact that they didn't get those actors back. I mean, they got Jada Pinkett Smith back as Naomie, but they couldn't get back, you know, Lawrence Fishburne. He's probably too busy doing, like, MacGruber or something. The action this time around really wasn't that spectacular. Like, it serves its purpose. It gets the job done, but I think the fact that when it comes more to the original films, there was a little bit more finesse, and there was a lot more, like, you know? Like, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But while I am happy with the fact that this movie does exist, I think that's the byline that my basic review of this is, I am happy that it exists. But did it really need to? Not really. But it does definitely have its merits. I do like the fact that at its core, it's basically just, it's not about a machine of humans rebelling against the machines or the Matrix or whatever. It's just a love story and how it's just Neo just trying to get back with Trinity. You know, just trying to be able to save her. And I do like the fact that for the opening of this movie, it parallels the opening of the first Matrix, and the fact that this new scenario that Neo has now found himself in is that he's a game developer who made this trilogy of Matrix games based upon these dreams that he had of the Matrix. And then, of course, you got the fact that this scene where Jonathan Groff is like, our parent company, Warner Brothers, wants us to make a sequel to the Matrix. And they're going to do it with or without our involvement. It's like, I thought they couldn't do that. Well, they can. I get the feeling that that was directly written in because that was exactly what was going to happen in real life. Because every year since the Matrix trilogy wrapped, Warner Brothers has been pestering the Wachowskis. Can we do another Matrix movie? Can you make another Matrix movie? Can you make us another Matrix movie? It's like, no, we're not gonna. The trilogy is wrapped up. And initially, Warner Brothers was going to do a Matrix movie without the involvement of the Wachowskis, as they were going to have Zach Penn write a script for what was believed to be a young Morpheus movie. But obviously, of course, that did not end up happening because Resurrections happened in its place. And even then, Warner Brothers was pretty satisfied with it and are actually currently courting Lana Wachowski to make another Matrix movie after this. And it's like, you guys never end. And that's one thing I really gotta give credit for Resurrections. It is a lot more self-aware and it is a lot more humorous than the other Matrix films. I'll give it that much. How much of that, you know, works in its favor to its detriment, you make that decision, but I did think the fact that it was a nice change of pace, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, very much like Eternals, I'm going to give Matrix Resurrections a 6. I think it's fine. But it really doesn't have much of a reason to exist. It's nice, but it doesn't really have much. It doesn't really have much purpose. That was my best Agent Smith impression. I apologize in advance. But yeah, those are all the films that I've yet to talk about. But I really want to make this video worth your while, so I'm going to talk about at least 3 more things. Specifically, the 2 remaining Marvel shows that released this year, and the only new 2021 released video game that I played this year. So, the 2 Marvel shows that I'm going to be talking about briefly are What If and Hawkeye. What If, for Marvel Studios' first foray into the animation scene, I thought it was pretty neat. Definitely some episodes I liked more than others. I really liked episode 4, What If Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. I think that was probably the best episode. And I did like the What If Zombies episode, because I'm a big fan of Marvel Zombies, and of course, I'm a big horror movie junkie. So seeing this Marvel take on a zombie film was really nice and, really cool. Some episodes didn't really hit all that much, like the first episode, like What If Captain Carter became the first super soldier? What if Captain Carter became the first Avenger? Whatever that was titled. So not all stories hit, but it is really nice being able to see these alternate takes on all these different Marvel movies and have most of the actors from those Marvel movies reprise their roles, and having Jeffrey Wright at the center of it as the Watcher. And he does a great job as the Watcher. I think he's fantastic. And I'm really excited to see where exactly the future of Marvel animation holds, because we know What If is getting a second season. But we also know the fact that we're getting a Marvel Zombies spin-off TV show. We're getting Spider-Man Freshman Year, which is going to explore the first year of Peter Parker as Spider-Man in the MCU. Because by the time we pick up with him in Homecoming and Civil War, he's a sophomore in high school. He's not a freshman. We're getting a revival of X-Men, the animated series with X-Men 97, which I'm really looking forward to that one. But yeah. So, yeah. Overall, well, obviously, of course, there were really good things about it. Overall, I definitely have to give What If a 7. Like, overall, it was pretty good. Hawkeye. Now, that was really good. After seeing these big, ultra, like, universe-spanning tales that Marvel's been putting out recently with stuff like Shang-Chi or Eternals or No Way Home, it was just nice to have, like, a nice street-level story with Marvel, like a nice street-level hero story. And it's, and I really like the premise behind it. I love the fact that it's Clint Barton. He's just trying to get home for Christmas, but he ends up meeting Kate Bishop, and then he finds himself entangled in this big web of crime and whatnot, and has to basically get involved in this big criminal conspiracy. Well, if he'll be able to make it back home for Christmas, of course. And I gotta state, really like the chemistry and the banter between both Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld, who knocks it out of the park as Kate Bishop. She did a fantastic job in this show. And of course, the main influence behind this show was, of course, the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye. And you can definitely feel that from the fact that the return of Clint's hearing loss is prominently featured here. There's also the fact that, of course, we have Lucky the Pizza Dog, and it's mainly about Kate Bishop and Clint Barton teaming up to stop a criminal conspiracy and whatnot. It very much feels like a storyline pulled directly from the comics. In fact, Matt Fraction, if I remember correctly, was credited as a supervising producer on the show, or consulting producer on the show, which I think was really neat. Really wish the fact that they would have given royalties to David Aja, whatever, the artist of that comic, because apparently they ended up basically just taking his art style and just didn't even bother paying him for it, which is unfortunate. And not only that, but I was really happy to see the return of one particular character. If you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about, but man, it was just so cool being able to know the fact that they're bringing in stuff from the Netflix show and putting it in the proper MCU. And not only that, but Alika Cox, I think was her name, who plays Echo. This is apparently her first big studio-related work, and I legitimately could not tell, because she did a really good job. Like, both her and Lauren Ridloff from Eternals, I really like the fact that Marvel's really pushing for a lot of diversity in their projects, and the fact that they have 2 projects come out in 2021 that both feature 2 prominent characters that are both deaf. Like, I think that was really, really cool. And I am really intrigued because, we know that Echo is going to be getting her own spin-off show, so that's going to be intriguing. And I'm really intrigued to see if that certain character is going to be returning as well. Just saying. But yeah, Hawkeye was a really solid show, and I'm going to give it an 8. And now, the final thing I will be discussing is, of course, it was the one newly released game that came out in 2021 that I ended up playing. The only reason why is because, let's just say that around March of 2022, you're going to get a very interesting video involving one franchise that I ended up starting up earlier this year. Wink, wink. Let's just say the fact that it has to deal with a certain crossover between Disney and Square Enix. Wink. But yeah. The one new game of 2021 that I did play was Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this was announced back during Square Enix's big E3 2021 panel, and everybody was like super skeptical of it. It's like, what? They're making a Guardians of the Galaxy game? After that disastrous Avengers game that ended up happening there, it's like, oh god, they're making a Guardians of the Galaxy game. And so people went into this with really low expectations. So when the game did actually release, people were like, whoa, this is actually a good game. See, basically what the game did is it took everything that Avengers was and did the opposite of that. Instead of being a multiplayer online live service game, it was a single player only action-adventure third-person game with no microtransactions, no downloadable content, or anything like that. It was just the game. When you pop in the game, after you wait for it to download, you get to play the game. That's very rare. And it was actually really, really good too. Like, there's a reason why this won Best Narrative at the Game Awards. Because the story is really, really engaging. Yes, you will probably end up having to sit through a lot more cutscenes than you will actually do in gameplay. But it is legitimately engaging, and the characterization of the Guardians is really, really good. It's clear the fact that it's not trying to be the comic version of the Guardians or the movie version of the Guardians. It's clearly trying to it's trying to do its own thing, and it does it really well. And, you know, the visuals in this game are, of course, absolutely incredible. You know, that goes without saying. And seeing all the different character interactions between not just the Guardians, but also other supporting cast members like Cosmo, the Russian psychic golden retriever. Yes, that is a real thing. Was really, really cool. And being able to see all these really cool deep cuts to the cosmic side of Marvel was also really cool to see as well. Yeah, this was just a really, really all-around solid game. The only real kind of criticism that I have with it is the combat was, I think as Zanny put it, it's tap water. Like, it's fine. It gets the job done. But, you know, it's just, you know, now, it's alright. It's not the best. But, yeah, this was surprisingly a really, really good game. If you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, if you're a fan of third-person action-adventure games, if you're just a fan of just really, really beautiful, just looking games as well, like, yeah, definitely do play Guardians of the Galaxy. What I'm saying is play Guardians of the Galaxy, because it's actually really, really, really good. But, yeah, so, this is probably the longest video I have ever made, and, of course, like most of these videos, it's just me rambling. But, hey, if you guys get a kick out of it, then cool. I'm doing my job right. So, yeah, this is the final video of 2021, as mentioned beforehand. This year has been a lot, as you can, for a lot of people. And of course, you know, now that 2021 is going to be behind us, I'm super excited to see where 2022 is going to take us next. And as I previously mentioned in my update video, the format of my videos is also going to change as well. So instead of having me do a video about like when a new movie releases, like the weekend of, I'm going to do a video towards the end of the month in which I talk about all the major releases that I had seen, and then do a video just talking about like every January 2022 movie I had seen, or every February 2022 movie I had seen, other things like that. So it's kind of similar to this. But yeah, that about does it. Thank you guys so much for watching my stuff. Really appreciate it. Make sure to make sure to give it a like, and make sure, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to do it, and make sure to ring the notification bell, so that way you don't miss a single upload. And here's the 2022. Stay gold.